Hi, both. Thanks for joining us today on our Business Gurus channel, where we will be discussing key business topics to help students grasp the most important elements of their course in preparation for their exams and future career. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're putting our magnifying glass over something really interesting, the social enterprise.
hmm
These organizations trying to, well, use the engine of commerce, really, to achieve social good. It sounds almost contradictory.
It does on the surface.
We hear purpose before profit a lot, but what does that actually look like day to day? How do they make it work? So, our mission today in this deep dive is really twofold. First, what actually defines a social enterprise? What keeps that purpose primary?
Right.
And second, crucially, how does the way they fund themselves, keep the lights on, fundamentally differ from a traditional charity? That seems key.
Absolutely key. And it fits into this broader context of business goals.
Yeah.
Usually we think money, financial returns.
Yeah, the bottom line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, our focus is squarely on what we call non-financial objectives. That's the defining feature here, setting them apart from purely financial goals.
Okay, so let's start there. Non-financial objectives. The core definition we have is that a social enterprise is a business with specific social objectives as its primary purpose.
That's the heart of it. Primary purpose.
But, in the real world, the business world is tough. Doesn't making the social goal primary immediately put them, well, at a disadvantage compared to companies just laser focused on profit?
It definitely creates tension, a real friction point. And honestly, that's what makes them so compelling to study. Think about how we usually set goals in organizations. You got aims, the big picture, the vision,
Right, the grand plan.
and then objectives, specific measurable steps, the SMART goals to get there.
Okay.
For a standard private company, the aim might be market leadership.
Yeah.
The objective, maybe a 15% profit increase this year, purely financial.
Makes sense.
But for a social enterprise, the aim is different. It's about social change. So their objectives have to be primarily non-financial.
So, like, instead of profit targets.
Exactly. Instead of aiming for 15% profit, their objective might be, say, employ 50 people who've been long-term unemployed by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. Very specific, but social.
Right. They still need money, financial stability, of course, to survive. But that social metric, that's their true north. It requires enormous discipline to avoid what's called mission drift.
Mission drift,
Yeah.
like slowly sliding back towards focusing just on the money.
Precisely. Forgetting why you started in the first place because the financial pressures mount. It's a constant battle.
So that distinction, financial versus non-financial objectives, is fundamental. It changes how you even measure success.
Completely.
But okay, this brings us to the really practical, maybe painful question. If their main goal isn't financial, how do they pay the bills? How do they fund these lofty goals? This
Yeah.
feels like where the whole model could just fall apart. They can't just rely on goodwill, can they, if they're purpose-driven?
No, they can't. And that right there is the absolute crux of it. This is the operational difference that our sources really hammer home. If you get this, you get the whole model. We're basically contrasting two different ways of getting money: donations versus trade.
Okay, let's focus on that. Donations versus trade. Most people get the charity model, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A charity generally pursues its mission primarily using donations.
Money people give.
Right. External generosity, grants, fundraising drives, galas, that sort of thing. You, the donor, give money, and that money funds the operation. It's often a one-way street, giver to organization.
Okay, clear enough.
A social enterprise, though, it runs on trade.
Yeah.
It operates by actively, buying and selling things, goods or services.
Like a regular business.
In terms of the activity, yes.
Right.
It generates its own revenue through commerce. The transaction is two-way. You get a product or a service, and the money you pay funds the mission.
Hold on, though. If they're trading, selling stuff, magazines, coffee, consulting, whatever, aren't they just a regular business that happens to do good things on the side? Like good PR. Where's the actual difference in how they operate day to day?
That's a fair question, and it's subtle but crucial. The difference isn't necessarily in the activity itself. They absolutely have to be efficient, market-aware, just like any private company. The difference lies in their legal structure and, critically, what happens to the profit, the surplus.
Ah, okay. The money left over.
Exactly. In a standard private business, that profit mainly goes to owners or shareholders.
Right.
In a social enterprise, the profit generated from that trade, from the buying and selling, is essentially locked in. It has to be reinvested back into achieving those non-financial social objectives.
So it fuels the mission directly.
Yes, it creates this self-sustaining cycle. That's what gives the mission its resilience.
That resilience point feels really important. I think it often gets missed. Because if a charity depends only on donations...
It's vulnerable.
Yeah. It's vulnerable to economic downturns, donor fatigue, like you mentioned, if there's a recession or some other big crisis happens somewhere else.
That donation stream can dry up very quickly.
Yeah.
You can almost think of it like this. A charity is maybe like a bucket with a small leak, needing constant refilling from donors. It depends on external kindness. A social enterprise running on trade is forced to build its own pump. It has to generate its own water, its revenue, through its core activity.
Which forces them to be better businesses.
It has to. It forces stronger business discipline.
Yeah.
You can't just get by on the emotional appeal of your mission alone, your actual product, your service. It has to be good enough, competitive. People have to want to buy it.
So in a way, the pressure to deliver quality is actually higher. Because if the product tanks, the mission tanks right along with it.
Precisely. If they're selling clothes, the clothes need to be desirable, priced right. If it's educational services, they have to deliver real value. That commercial success isn't just a nice to have, it's the engine. It powers the social objective.
Okay, that discipline ensures sustainability.
Yes, long-term sustainability.
Right. This is where I think seeing a real-world example makes all the difference. And our sources point to a classic one known globally, the big issue.
Ah, yes. A perfect example.
The big issue really seems to capture this structure perfectly. Their social aim is very clear. Help homeless and vulnerable people find a way out of poverty.
Right. And critically, how they do it.
Exactly. They could just run shelters or soup kitchens, classic charity work. But their method is fundamentally about trade. They give people the chance to earn their own income by selling the magazine.
Let's break down that mechanism because it shows exactly how the mission and the revenue stream are integrated. When you buy that magazine on the street from a vendor,
You're trading.
you are engaging in trade.
Yeah.
The vendor first buys the magazines at wholesale price. Then they sell them to you at the cover price. They keep the difference, the profit.
It's their business, essentially.
In a micro sense, yes. Now, the key point is your purchase isn't technically a donation, even if it feels like you're doing good. You receive something tangible, the magazine itself.
Okay.
And that act of buying and selling, that trade, is what directly enables the social objective. Providing income, yes, but also dignity, a sense of purpose for the vendor.
That is a critical difference because if I just walked up and gave the vendor, say, £5 without taking the magazine.
That's a donation, pure charity model.
Right. But by making sure I get a product for my money, the whole transaction supports the vendor as like a small business owner, part of the economy, not just someone receiving charity.
Exactly. And it loops back to that non-financial objective being primary.
Right.
The magazine itself has to be decent.
Yeah. You have to want to read it.
It needs to be interesting, topical, well-produced. The big issue as an organization has to operate like any efficient publisher, managing printing, distribution, content, logistics. But all that business effort isn't aimed at making shareholders rich. It's aimed at maximizing the number of vendors they can support, the social impact they can have.
And there's that built-in accountability again. If the magazine quality slips
Sales drop.
and the mission suffers directly.
The mission gets starved of funds. It's this really elegant, integrated system where the demands of the market actually help keep the social purpose sharp and effective.
Okay, we've contrasted this a lot with charities. What about just quickly clarifying the difference with a standard private business again? We touched on objectives earlier.
Right.
If a normal company decides to do some good, like corporate social responsibility, maybe donate 1% of profits.
That's generally treated as a cost.
Yeah.
It's money going out separate from how the company actually makes its money. Often is driven by marketing needs, reputation management.
Which is arguably still a financial objective, just indirect.
You could definitely argue that. The social enterprise flips that completely. The social objective is the core operating mechanism. The business activity is the mission activity. They're intertwined.
So it's not a cost center.
It's the whole point of the revenue stream. For a private company doing CSR, if the company tanks, the charitable giving usually stops first.
Makes sense.
For the social enterprise, if the social objective stops being met, the business itself has failed its fundamental purpose.
Yeah.
It ceases to be a social enterprise by definition.
That embedding of the social goal right inside the engine of commerce, that really is the key takeaway here, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It makes the mission potentially self-sustaining through that continuous cycle of buying and selling, as long as they keep that business side sharp. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening and you're maybe used to thinking in those traditional boxes, private for profit, public for service, not for profit for goodwill, this model really does force you to rethink things.
It does. And it leads us to, I think, a really important final thought to leave you with. We've seen how powerful trade can be, harnessed to drive and sustain these really important social aims.
Yeah.
So if we can build these successful social enterprises where making money directly delivers the mission, what does that maybe suggest about the future of purely private businesses?
Interesting question.
Does the success of this model challenge those traditional companies to do more than just, bolt-on CSR programs or PR initiatives? Should they be looking at integrating non-financial objectives more deeply into their core operations?
So not just asking how much money can we make, but how can the way we make money also solve a real problem?
Exactly. Could every business, whatever its structure, be thinking more about how its primary revenue stream contributes something positive beyond just shareholder value?
It definitely shows the market doesn't inherently reject purpose. It seems to welcome it, provided the business itself is sound.
Food for thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Something to think about as you encounter different organizations out there. Which ones are running on kindness and which ones are using the power of trade to drive their purpose? It's a defining feature of modern commerce. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks to both of you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Business Gurus. Let's now hand it over to you. What further questions do you have based on what we've discussed so far? Leave a comment and we'll get back to you right away. If you haven't already, hit that follow for more business tips.